And Sam might.
Sam might.
Now, who is Cindy?
Cindy is as a group, and we all have the same goals from a legislative standpoint. And you know, Ryan had brought up a good point to us previously that, you know, from the experience he and his father had with the ATV, you really, if you're going to be successful legislatively, you got to be able to speak with one voice. You can't do 10 different people all talking simultaneously. So this was sort of an effort to say, okay, you know, we're going to let everybody have their own thing, and maybe the group, the leadership could get together and form something to, you know, work on the legislative side of things. And that's how this whole thing came about. Tim and I and Sam and Ryan got together, and Chris, I don't know, a while back, and kind of said, well, let's just see where we can go with this. And that's when we said, well, let's try to get people like you involved, Bob and Cindy, and people who were advocating for off-road. And maybe we can work together and see what we get something done.
I think that kind of sums it up pretty good. One of the first things we did, though, was to talk about, is this going to be like another group, another association? I mean, with all these different groups around the table. So we kind of came up with the idea that this would just be a coalition of these groups, not another association. This is not going to be something where people join necessarily. This is a coalition of the bigger groups in the area with their leadership, just to sit around the table to come up with, you know, a common goal of advancing legislation. I mean, there were some discussions where we started talking about membership and raising funds, and it's like, oh, now we were asking people to join a whole nother group. So that's where we came up with the term Road Legal Four-Wheel Drive Coalition. So it's not another group, it's not another association, it's literally just the leaders of groups getting together to brainstorm. And really, Ryan is the one who really kind of pushed us to get this moving. And you're somewhat fresh to the four-wheel drive community, but really was pushing us to get together and drive legislation to get something going, whether it's park, trails. I mean, there was Warp V, which is now disbanded. You know, their focus was the park in Crandon. So this group is not focused on any one thing. It's other than legislation and where that takes us after. Could be several little riding areas. Could be just some trails. Anything to add to that, Ryan?
Yeah, basically we saw a commonality between how to do legislation with how the snowmobile groups came to pass and how the association got their stuff through, then the ATVs and the UTVs, and now the motorcycle group. So there's very common similar successes for how that's done. And you know, one of the main things that has to happen is all the user groups have to be on the same page. And we have to be able to finish each other's sentences when it comes to what our goals are legislatively. So the first thing we have to do is get our house in order. So all of us have to be on the same page to promote a common goal and decide what that goal is. When Wrangler Riders, when we first started that in June, I had a problem with 4x4. 4x4 is too broad, it's too diverse, it's too hard to narrow in on what we wanted to do. So it was a first exercise of trying to take a step back and think, how are we going to be perceived by the people who are making the decisions? And
yeah, part of that I think was you know, the term OHV. that opens
That's
it up
changed.
to, yeah, it's changed, so it opens up to a whole bunch of groups.
Right,
So
and
this-
we also took a look at the history of some of the other 4x4 groups, including WOVA, and how representing specific user groups under a whole umbrella didn't necessarily pan out the way it was designed, but rather working with the individual user groups that are already representing those very specific types of recreation worked a little bit better, you know. So,
I have a question for you.
yeah.
How have you been able to use the word Wrangler in your name, association name or group name? Because isn't that trademarked by Jeep?
It's not, because Levi's has Wrangler. Wrangler as a word is too common to trademark,
Oh,
but that's why we don't have the word, obviously, Jeep in there. We're pushing the envelope by having the front grille of the Jeep in our logo. We could get in trouble for that.
right.
Maybe. It
The
is,
wrong person
has it
sees
changed more than 10 or 15% that it needs to change in order to, as long as we're doing the right stuff, I don't know.
Okay. I'm just questioning.
Yeah, no,
because-
absolutely.
Because years ago, there was a club in Midwest that had the name Jeep, and
Yep.
they had to change it. They changed it to Jeepers,
Mhm.
but
We had talked about that early on too.
That's on Jeep curves.
We're way ahead of the curve.
We're at.
So we didn't want to compete with the 4x4 Forevers and Wisconsin 4-wheel drive and Wolva. We weren't trying to compete, so we went very specific to the vehicle that's used in 95% of the recreation that we're doing. So,
And the market he was looking at too is more of the newer owners, less experienced. A lot of us have been around so long, we're, for lack of a better term, a little bit more on the hardcore side, right? Ryan's market was people like him who just got a Jeep 2 years ago, and, right now all they're doing is driving it to the grocery store and, putting in 4-wheel drive when it's got snow outside, but his market was just to try and capture that, and those people got money.
And they're coming out of the woodwork. I mean, we've only been 3 months in the Allenton chapter, and we're gaining 3 people a week. And it's every week.
we just introduce it like, hey, if you've ever considered taking your vehicle on a trail instead of on the pavement, we'll help you do that. We'll do it the right way, we'll keep it safe. We're not gonna wreck your $50,000 vehicle. This isn't trash it in the mud stuff. This is fun, family recreation in a safe environment.
We took yesterday's workshop with how to just remove your doors on your Jeep.
How to do what?
How to take your doors off. I mean, it's entry level people that haven't dreamed of owning a Jeep and having that wind blow through their hair, but they never got around to taking the top off or the doors off, and they finally have a chance and they don't know how to do it.
A lot of us have seen that, a whole bunch of us, Chris and Tim and I and Bob have all done the Jeep Jamboree thing, where you get a whole pile of people who have no idea how to operate their Jeep, so we definitely understand that idea.
Look at Tim's focus, that's where our group is coming from, is the new people that are coming in.
One of the other questions I think we might want to talk about is, there's been a lot of questions on how we came up with that road legal definition and the size and all of that in our little get together. Now, I don't know that it has to stay that way. That was just the group that was our guess, right? I'm not know that that's the exact guess, but it was the guess we took.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't disagree with it, I just want this whole group
Yeah.
to agree with the same thing,
Right.
so
And
that down
and
the
that's why,
road,
that's
all.
and that's why we wanted, right from the first thing, we wanted to expand this to more users, because it means, to your very point, off-roading means something different to different people. It's not the same thing. The overlanders don't want to do rock crawling. They don't. That's not what they want to do. And rock crawlers get bored driving through the woods. So, we got a little different thing. But so the part of the business with how do we define where we're at, I think it came down to what would the what group would the legislation piece of this affect the most? And we said, well, probably buggies aren't gonna, you know, the legislation's gonna deal with state land and that kind of how that works. Buggies are more park people, right? And we said, look, we're still gonna work on getting parks and property to use, but this group being so legislative, but the focus here was about the legislative side of things. And who are the users? Because to Ryan's point, we have to have a boundary about who it is we are, right? Snowmobile is pretty easy to know what a snowmobile is, right? But we're not as defined as that. So that's how we came up with weight and size.
But if you look at the history of snowmobiles and ATVs and UTVs, snowmobiles, they started out as air-cooled, 100cc. They couldn't forge the side of a powder mountain. That just what I mean. 50 years ago, that just wasn't. That's not what they originally were designed for. Now they can. You know, now they got 1,000 horsepower, super track, everything. So ATV was the same way. If the UTV was the original ATV, I don't know that our legislation would have ever passed because it was too big. It was like a car, and we
for a
still have
while-
troubles with that.
I was gonna say, for a while, it was just on a temporary basis.
Right, right. And we're finding that that program is still evolving. It's not perfect yet. It's not,
And that's never will be perfect.
well, you know what I mean, but
And it,
there's too many, the groups are segregated. And just like this, you know, there's the trail user, there's a little bit more aggressive trail user, there's the buggy all the way trail user, there's the people who just like to play in the mud, there's people that never play in the mud, there's always the rock, you know, there's just, so starting with the road legal four-wheel drive, that's easy to approach, you know, shake hands and kiss babies with the politicians, to, as the general public perceives it, it is the largest market. From going to town board meetings and other clubs and saying, look, this is the largest percentage of the user base, you know, out of 5.8 million registered AT or vehicles in Wisconsin, I would guess somewhere along the lines of 30% of them could be considered a road legal four-wheel drive. So those are numbers that we can jumpstart and start with to help our cause.
Do you have a copy of your definition that, since I'm just coming into it,
Uh,
or you could get to?
Everything we've done, we've always said draft, because there wasn't enough people involved to help make that decision, I don't think, but.
Right, and we really haven't gotten to that point.
Oh, okay.
We met twice just purely out of brainstorming.
Okay.
One thing we did do last time was we came up with our mission statement, which is on the second page here. But I mean, even to Ryan's point earlier about trying to define, I mean, I think our first name, somebody said, so I have off-road motorcycle, so I can be part of this too. But it's like, all right.
Because we originally went with road legal trail vehicle. Our group
Yeah.
had this discussion immediately after we started. And we went with road legal trail vehicle. Well, then the motorcycle guy's like, I'm a road legal trail vehicle. Well, yeah, I guess so. And Joel was like, you need to put four-wheel drive in there. Oh, that's a great idea, you know, and then, so it just,
And some of the discussions we've had was, you know, we're looking at size of vehicle, weights, dimensions, things like that. And initially, I think it was a little bit too small. We were kind of excluding like a full-size pickup truck, but we've expanded that to, you know, Ford F-150 now could be considered within these specifications.
and we're seeing a lot of the new, smaller than half-ton pickups that are trying to approach the trail riding market with their Colorados and that kind of stuff, where it's a little bit more trail capable than a road vehicle. So I think we were at 90 inches wide by 190 inches long, 6,500 pounds.
Yeah.
The pound weighting was basically so that we would be under the, if we would ever get a chance of getting shared trails and we had to share a bridge or something, to not have to build $1 million bridge, that's awesome. So sticking under the bridge limit right now for most recreations is 14,000 pounds or less. And so the 6,500 pounds keeps us in that that ballpark.
Ryan, I mean, is there a tire specification maximum in that definition? I would think the DNR.
No, we don't wanna get too specific.
Well, there is though, because we're road legal, which the lift laws say you can only go 8 inches over stock. So the lift laws that are already in place take care of that stuff, we don't have to worry about it.
Right, so that we don't have to define it.
Right, because we're not gonna be out there on the trails policing, well, you're this and this and.
Yeah, and
You
that
got your
kinda-
heads, you know, that's,
I
Can
mean,
you
Bob
explain
kinda
what-
had that question as well, as far as, you know, a lot of our rigs aren't technically road legal, well, we're not really getting pulled over either, I mean, you know. So,
Keep
yeah,
your
we'll
nose clean.
piggyback on their laws so that we don't have to rewrite that type of stuff.
and politically, that'll help a lot.
Can you
because that's
explain this, what you were saying with the 14,000 bridge limit?
14,000 pounds is what the State Trails Council funds recreational bridges to my understanding. If my brother was here, he could tell me he's on that council. but-
For state trail council,
So is
bridges
one.
for what? For
For ATV snowmobiles
14,000?
is what the
I
funding
didn't
committee will
realize
go-
that.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
And they're trying to raise that to 26,000. There's a lot of controversy right now between the snowmobile and ATV groups with that.
Okay, because that was something I had,
You said
in some of the
26,000.
discussion, it was supposed to be, but well, the maximum weight that they use for, like, Black River Falls is that the vehicle weight cannot be over 3,000, but the vehicle to register is only 2,000. So it was 3,000, that's why I didn't realize this 14,000 came into play.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it boils down to the groomers. The snowmobile groups
Yeah,
are getting
right.
into the point where they're buying groomers that are so heavy
Right.
that the bridges can't sustain them safely.
Or
Or
four-wheel
or they're
drive
using
tractors.
farmer tractors now,
Yeah.
putting tracks
Four-wheel
on them.
drive tractors then.
So does that then allow then, with the 14,000, then you could actually have 2 vehicles on the bridge at one time at 6,500 and still not be over the
Our 90-inch width would limit
allow
it.
that.
We would never have a bridge wide enough to put 2 road legal four-wheel drives on there if we had a shared trail situation.
Right, but that's
We,
okay.
we,
They're not that long. no.
we're really not as concerned with that, in my opinion, because the road legal part takes care of it, where we can just jump on the road, go on the real bridge that the DOT makes, and,
Unless it's out in the middle of nowhere.
right, you know, we're trying to forecast what we don't know yet. But by keeping these weight limits sustainable, you're gonna eliminate some of the, you know, super heavy machines that would just, you know, they would destroy a trail if it was soft,
I
so.
agree,
But that's not to say, you know, phase 1, we do the road wheel trail vehicle, open some parks, establish some trail networks, get everybody on board. And then one of these parks could say, yeah, let's make the buggy registration. Okay, some of these parks would have that. I mean, that would be like a phase 2 step in it. You gotta start somewhere though.
Question with the road legal. A lot of the roads up north are being opened to UTVs and ATVs. So they actually would be road legal.
That's a different
But
trail
it
network,
comes
though.
at-
I mean,
That's defined in the UTV, ATV route definition. They're not DOT legal. They don't have the right bumpers, roll cages. They're not to DOT spec, even with the roll cages that they do have. And that's what the manufacturers are worried about. They're opening up so many roads
Absolutely.
that if the DOT really wanted to step in and say, look, 90% of the stuff you're doing is on the road. You need to be road compliant. That would change the UTV to a small SUV.
Absolutely.
And then you lose the whole UTV. So they don't want that to happen. We definitely don't want that to happen.
Well, your counties and townships are doing that because they see the economic impact.
Oh, yeah, big time.
We're seeing that up by us. First it was the town roads for the town of Armstrong Creek and Goodman, and now they're working on the county.
I would
And the way they
anticipate,
fly, somebody's gonna get killed.
well, you'll do that in anything.
Yeah.
I would anticipate if we got a road legal four-wheel drive legislation in place, literally how expensive a UTV is, you're in Jeep territory at that point. If I had to make the choice, I would then choose the Jeep, because now I can ride on the trail and I can do all the roads. So I would think that we would actually be competing for the same customer or same kind of trail rider at that point.
But we could, but the ATVs already have established trails, and we wouldn't wouldn't necessarily be on those trails.
Right. The trails we're trying to build aren't necessary, nothing's fun about a flat gravel road.
No.
And our vehicles are more capable than an ATV, UTV, motorcycle, or snowmobile. And that's the real difference in what we're trying to represent here. It is a different user group that is not the same as what everybody else's is. You know, we can crawl over rocks and trees and things that would no other vehicle can do. You know, we promote the use of, you know, solid axles and short wheelbase and, you know, differential locks and stuff that on a smaller scale with even UTVs, you don't, it's just not, you know, physically capable of doing that, so.
Can I ask, you said WRFP is now, they've officially are defunct, is that correct?
Yes,
So what?
they have dissolved.
So what do they do with the treasury?
It's being donated to various other nonprofit organizations.
They have to be
Like we're-
501c3 or do they have to be?
It's got to be
They can't
501.
use that.
Yeah, it's going to Blue Ribbon, Tread Lightly, and Mobile.
Okay, I was just asking if there was some possibility of somehow utilizing, because one of their objectives was parks and that, if it could somehow be funded towards this legislation.
That was one of the whole funding issue is one we haven't really
That's, yeah.
got our arms around yet because
Right, that's on the agenda
Yeah,
for
yeah.
next steps, so, and we did talk about that a little bit. And that's where the whole membership thing came into play, and like Ryan had said at your meeting, you know, I kind of stepped up and said, whoa, I think we're going down the wrong road here, this is, again, not another membership group, this is the leaders of various organizations that represent large groups of people getting together to drive the legislation, as opposed to another group. I guess just kind of going down the notes, you know, we were talking about how to involve others. So, you know, that's why Wisconsin's here, Titletown is here. We talked about Wisconsin Jeep Owners Group, the Jeeples. Some of the people who are larger in numbers, very visible in Facebook groups, you know, have large followings, that type of thing. We also talked about how to involve not sponsors, but aftermarket businesses. You know, if there was something in it for them as well. Haven't really, other than discussion, haven't decided to do much with businesses yet. But we do have majority of the groups here now. And then Madison representation, I mean, when you're looking at from the national standpoint, you know, SEMA's got a pretty good voice, Blue Ribbon, Novak, that type of thing.
May have had, or may have had at one time.
Oh,
Good.
right.
When you,
Why did Merso drop out?
He's a leader. He's a speaker. One of the, he is actually one of the committee heads that legislation would probably go to, is what I was told.
Is that why he's not representing?
That's why he won't, at this point, because I wanted my
Okay.
discussion, but I
That's
don't
what I
know
was wondering.
if that's why he withdrew. That I don't know at the time.
As a sponsor?
Yeah, I think he's also tied into another
Transportation.
group at this point, so.
Yeah, and the
Conflict
group
of
that he
interest.
could potentially oppose this legislation.
Right.
Okay. I had never heard why.
Is Tread Lightly, would they be considered representation or not?
They're not really one to
They're
go out and
not
advocate,
legislative.
they're more a training resource.
Okay,
That's my
that's-
opinion.
I don't think they don't have any lobby or anything.
no, not that I know of, no.
Okay.
Well, there's some rules around lobbying
Right.
as a three, right? We went through this when we decided the WOBA thing, we, as a C3, you're not allowed to lobby.
For more than 20% of your.
Yeah, that's changed. We just did that. Because we didn't want to be a C3. I couldn't do anything with a C3 if I couldn't lobby, because I'm fully wanting to engage in Madison for this purpose. But we did a lot of research on it, and you can't be you can't pay somebody to do lobby on behalf of a 501c3 for more than 20% of, what is it?
your expenditures as a
of your
nonprofit.
expenditures. So you got a 20% buffer.
When did that change?
I don't know.
Had to be approved,
2017, like 3 months ago, and that was stipulated.
and we went through this in 16.
Yeah, and that's why we ended up doing a 7, because we were like, well, this effort that we're all doing right now is one of the things we said was part of what our purpose was, right? So,
Well-
if we can't lobby, we're done.
You were a 501c3, right, both of us?
We were a 501, period.
There
We
was
never
no
filed
You
for
were never in
C3s.
No.
Never filed for C3.
501c7 otherwise.
Because when LSRA dissolved, neither association could get any money because
Right.
they were 501. I thought
501c7.
at the time. Yeah, it had to go to C7, I think.
But we wanted to, the other thing we had with Wrangler Riders was we are marketing to a specific user group. We're not necessarily marketing to a community as a whole, which kind of jives with the C3 terminology, until we added the Trail Ambassador program to Wrangler Riders' objectives.
The education piece.
The education piece, but because we serve the community as Wrangler Riders in the event of a catastrophe or when a community needs our type of vehicles in emergency response, now we're totally clear on the C3 clarification. So that hung us up for quite a few weeks too, to figure out. We asked our accountants, we were trying to get, okay, when we get audited, what rebuttals would surface? How can we forecast to rebuttal the rebuttals? And when you're serving the community through the Trail Ambassador program, because now that program is listed in emergency response. So that opens up a lot of doors from that stuff, so.
So will the coalition have to be incorporated?
I don't know. That's.
That has yet to be determined. Again, we've, no, it's, Icewater with them. Again, we've only met a couple of times and just brainstormed. So we're just kind of taking this to the next level with this meeting today. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered yet. We know what our outcome is, and that is to drive legislation.
Don't give us too much credit, we haven't enough time to talk that much.
Well, I don't know what I'm jumping into, so.
Yeah, well, we're not sure either. But,
I guess going down the list some more, from a standpoint of like board of directors or something like that, we didn't want to have like set positions. We basically just all want to be equal. But figured there needs to be a chairman of the board. We decided probably would be like a 1-year term, and a treasurer and a secretary. Just somebody's got to pay any kind of bills and somebody's got to take notes. Outside that, we're just all members at large as a board.
So then there would be a checkbook.
I think at some point there's going to have to be if
Yeah,
you're going to want
that's
to
what I'm
hire a
trying-
lobbyist, right?
And can you do that then would it come under a title of like a 4-wheel drive coalition? Would that be adequate for them? Or do they have to show, do you have to show some organization type thing or anything?
I guess probably you do.
Once you get money involved, you gotta do a lot more
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
on papers, organized.
Yeah, and in the end of the day, we said we're gonna have to, money's gotta come, if we're gonna be successful, we will end up spending. I don't know.
They have to.
And that's actually on the second sheet, for next steps. I mean, some of that is what we wanted to start talking about today. But on that note, I mean, how do we fund the association? Are there fundraising efforts we could do? Are there grants available? Potential for some organizations to kick in some seed money just to get us going. And other corporations and businesses. That kind of goes back to some of the aftermarket dealers and stuff like that. And then who makes up this committee? So we looked at Wrangler Riders, Volvo, Wisconsin, 4-wheel drive, Wisconsin Jeep Owners Group, Titletown, and Jeeples. Again, the thought process there is We want to basically represent all four-wheel drive users groups, but not necessarily have somebody from every group in the state be on this council. You get too many people around the table, you don't get things done. There's just too many differences in opinions and thoughts. So we also want to keep it manageable, I guess, but yet represent some of the larger groups that are out there.
So if someone contacts you and says, I want to be a part of this, and they're part of a smaller group, but they have a lot of passion behind this, how are we gonna weed out?
There you go, nice correction.
How will we address that? That's not a question anybody can probably answer now, but something, you know, you have
Something to discuss. Great
Great Lakes or whatever, these guys come in, they only have a few people left, whatever, but they want to join and be part of this, so, I don't know.
That would
Because
almost
you're
be like
necessarily a bigger group
subcommittee.
doesn't mean you have better ideas,
That would almost like a subcommittee,
so. okay.
you know,
I
because
just
if you want
bring
to
that
keep
up,
the
think about it.
organizational part of it at a smaller level, that would almost be like a subcommittee. That's all
We are talking about this with Wrangler riders too, and we are trying to start new chapters, and people want to come in, or they have a small group and they want to convert over to what we're doing. How do we do that? And the best thing we came up with so far is make it performance-based. What assets do you have for the four-wheel drive community? What have you done? What events are you doing? How are you promoting? What is your image? You know, if you answer all those and you're in the green light and you're doing everything right, you should be considered for what we're trying to do. So I don't know if that could potentially be building blocks for this as well, you know. If like you said, you got a super hardcore, passionate group that's in Polk County and they're just dynamite, they're great, and they're doing everything right, it'd be super to have them and their enthusiasm to be involved.
Once again, we need them, because we talked about being one voice again, right? Last thing we need to do is
Generate animosity.
create animosity.
Yeah.
Right. That'll ruin this group, this effort, just like it ruined so many in the past, so there's no good. Oh, I don't know if I can't think of a good answer for you other than,
That's good, it's good, you don't necessarily have an answer.
well, before you go too far, there's a whole bunch of people that never did this before. How do you use stuff making sense to you? Is this the kind of thing you think we should be doing?
I think it makes sense.
This is just an attempt here, we're just getting.
Potential, I see.
I'm looking at Bob because he wasn't part of this before, so is this something that you think is a good idea, Bob, or?
I think it is, because I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
You know, I think it has the burden of being, you know, the next group.
Right.
Because I'm looking at it from the outside, it's been, you know, this group, then this group, then this group, and now you're coming with the next greatest thing.
Right.
You know, and that's part of how you get people, you know, like, how do you get them involved? You know, what's your sales pitch type of deal? Not that you want it to be a sales pitch, but to get them actually involved. I think there needs to be more clarity out there from what I've seen on the Facebook posts and all that. You know, from the road legal stuff. I mean, that was one of my questions, road legal, and I'm the one that said, you know, half the Jeeps, my Jeep's not road legal, technically. You know, I know yours isn't, and
It was at one time.
It wasn't one time. It rolled up the showroom floor.
until I bought it. But clarifying that, even the road legal four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, does it have to have a transfer case, does it have to have low range, stuff like that. I've seen the term park thrown around a lot, where like your camp, I've seen, you know, and I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, just what I've witnessed is referring to it as a park. But then you have all the people that look at Badlands and Cliffs as a park where you pay your fee, you go in there anytime, you know, where it's not only times and only membered. And that's, I've seen that pop up multiple times, questioning, people hear park, let's go. Oh, well, it's only these days and all that. So I think just getting the terms and the clarity out there will help solve, you know, some of the issues of, you know, 'cause I saw one of the posts where it was referred to as paying membership was just like buying and it wasn't from you, I'm just looking at you,
Yeah, no,
because you're sitting
that's
across
fine.
from me. But buying membership was the same as buying an ORV sticker in Michigan. That sounds like the farthest thing from the truth. But, just because everybody's throwing out their own little things, that it just all gets lost, and, and then you lose your one voice, because maybe too many people are trying to define things and fill in the blanks and all that. As I saw that one post go downhill fast, and well, that's part of Facebook, but, just my opinions on what I've seen, that I think if you clear it up a little bit, it's a good start to keep it going. But I mean, I like I said, I do think it's necessary. I do think, because if the people at this table right here don't do it, nobody's going to. It will remain the same. It's everybody's tried, everybody's got a little side project going on or whatever, but to attack state level, I mean, it isn't going to get done by sitting there waiting for somebody else to do it.
I just throw in a thought out there. You get groups together like this, the one thing we gotta be careful of is money. And you're right, to get it done, there's gonna be lobbying, there's gonna be expense. I mean, one thing that can tear this whole thing apart is if Brian feels he's contributing more to Regan versus Bob, and fractions happen, and it falls apart. So we gotta be really careful on the funding piece, on where that money's coming from. And just be sensitive to that as a group, that we're all in this together. And if we can get sponsors, I think that ultimately it's gonna happen to get funding, because individually, I don't think any one person wants to fund this whole organization by themselves.
Well, when we started Novak,
No money.
Novak was literally started by the request of American Honda. They said, we'll throw you this much seed money, make it happen. And that's literally how it started. And then we got other things on board to make that happen. Tread Lightly is almost the same format, where they're providing the educational services and resources through the whole community by the backings of Ford and Land Rover and whoever the sponsors are at this given time. On the ATV, on the Wisconsin ATV side, we did that through the Novus Group. It's a nonprofit, but it's a not-for-profit. That's a C4. WATFA, as Wisconsin ATV Association, isn't in a position to do that type of stuff, so we had to make something where the manufacturers could support it for specific goals, which basically was lobbying at that point, but from the user group. So there's examples that can be utilized in this fashion that have worked and have not worked, that we can use to model it however the group decides.
I think grants, there are definitely grants out there. I think even like BRC, but now it's what it's called, Road Shared Trails. I think they have grants that for this kind of activity they can probably support. There's different places like that. And I also think that there are a lot of clubs out there, I shouldn't say a lot, but several clubs out there that probably have their little savings account that's not so little, that would, when they realize that this starts working out, they'll be ready to pitch in, but it would be on a arbitrary.
Instead of supporting the whole coalition, what we learned with the Wisconsin Power Sports Dealers Association when we tried that was it was much easier to fund a campaign for a specific goal than it was to support an entire campaign for everything. The money has to be used specifically for this at this time. How those monies get spent gets reported on a monthly or quarterly basis. And then the performance of that money spent can be analyzed specifically for that goal. And then that way you're not trying to fund the whole thing with all these things and, you know, well, we got advertising funding.
And they don't know where it's gonna go.
Right, you know, you get diluted pretty quickly if you're trying to run it like everything else. Whereas if it's a specific task, specific goal, specific allocated dollars for that goal, and we need this result as the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do. So,
In Lon, from the club standpoint, I mean, if we've got a specific goal and agenda, that's where we can reach out to those other clubs
Right.
and say,
Yeah.
you know, hey, we need your support for this. Are you able to do X? Whatever that is.
Or even the manufacturer side, if we can articulate to some manufacturers reps, I think SAC goals, it works for them better than if we just say we're a group, we do all the stuff.
Right.
Right.
And to use co-op dollars for dealerships to get support on that side, there's a lot of possibility on that one too. You know,
Right, dealerships might be more of a problem than aftermarkets, because dealerships generally say, well, we don't really need the off-road four-wheel drive group, because majority of our vehicles never see off-road. That's always been a real issue.
Yep, that's true, but I'll look at a place in town here like Colosso. He's paid a guy to modify so many Jeeps that isn't
Right.
fun. Right?
That's
Not to
aftermarket.
make them super off-road capable, but,
they sell better.
you
Yeah.
know.
But that's aftermarket again, would that be considered?
Well, Colosso pays for it. They take a brand new Jeep, that they bring in a thing, send it off, get
Yep,
different wheels and tires and.
Ganju does that too. They
Okay.
basically will pay Toys for Trucks, X number of dollars, flip this around, make it neat, and we'll put it back on the showroom and add 50 grand.
I just spent a day with Chief doing the dealer training for the JL at a dealership that's one of our sponsors. They said 30% of all their Chiefs they expect to be used off-road, and the dealers are incentivized to have facilities to do modifications, do lifts, do the bigger tires, do the steering stabilizers, because they know 30% is that market. So yeah, it's not the majority of the market, but it's a significant dollars when that adds up.
And if we get 15 trail networks involved in 5 parks, you can guess that number's gonna go way up.
We've got a couple of dealerships that have jumped all in to sponsor us, because that's what they're after. They want that business from the off-road community. So it adds up.
And the money, and if you present this correctly, it would be very hard to have people deny what we're trying to do. But it has to be done universally throughout all the groups.
That's a good market. If we don't have every Jeep dealership in the state hooked up to a club, we're missing money like crazy.
Well, they're missing opportunity too. You know, when we got the Trail Tales magazine on the Watford side, that has basically every club in the state. That has every trail in the state. And the dealers, the way I pitch it to the dealers is, look, you got somebody kicking tires on a new vehicle, and you can validate, this is some of the fun stuff you can do with this vehicle. You know your likelihood of signing that new purchase is way higher than before you did that. We'll do entire training seminars for salespeople at dealerships. And you have to do it all the time because salespeople roll a lot.
Well,
Nobody stays in sales.
travel around the country and you can really tell the parts of the country that do a lot of off-roading stuff and how the dealers treat that versus Wisconsin. Because we don't have anything, the dealers don't, it's a which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? You go to Utah or Arizona or a place like that, the dealers are all in on off-roading, right? You go to a dealership and they're all in. They'll sponsor stuff, they'll do all kinds of, because they have availability to do it. Here, there just isn't.
Well, this is, or we just haven't asked, we just asked 3 and all 3 said yes. We've only asked 3. We haven't said heard no yet.
Well, because you have a place, you have a thing, right? Without a place or a thing, you're just a guy walking in saying, hey,
Asking for money.
we do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we've had that discussion before, right? You know, it's not an accident that Titletown has a dump load of members right now, right? It directly relates to the fact that you have access to mowing, right? I think that's a huge piece of it, right?
I don't know, I wouldn't say that, just because you don't have but 10%
No,
that do it, they don't go do it. Usually they just get involved, usually they get involved, you know, the Toys for Tots brings in
Yes,
majority of members,
that's
stuff
the
like
thing.
that,
Right.
but
You're doing stuff.
You're doing
Yeah,
stuff.
I said it, I
You're
wouldn't tie
doing
it
stuff.
to.
You're doing stuff. Even our little club, we do a lot of stuff. We've been,
How big is your club now?
We closed, well, our membership is per family, so husband and wife, we
Yeah.
had 120 family memberships. So we were over 200 individual people.
so it's, if you have stuff, people will join. That's,
Well, we're trying to train chapters and join regular riders. That's one of the things we're the getting started guide booklet that we had at the annual meeting, it's addressing that. Sure, you don't have parks, you don't have trails. You won't start with that in most cases. But you have to do things. You
Yeah.
have to do, do the fair, have a booth there, do Jeep teams, do, car shows. We can do that. Yeah, get involved with Boys and Girls Club or Toys for Tots or, just, if you don't make events, you don't exist. You just, and with the social media, you can utilize all these tools for nothing. So just
Well,
do something and put it up.
I've said that at our different Woven meetings and everything. I'm like, I don't enjoy meetings that much that I want to join.
And your younger
I
people
want to join
don't.
because we're going to do something. I joined Woven because you guys were doing Bull Lake, and I just joined Titletown because Bob's cool. But Wrangler Riders, you guys are going to do stuff. I want to go and do stuff. I'm not at a spot in my life where I just want to go sit and talk about doing stuff. I want to go and experience things. Social. I want to be a part of a community. I want to do these things. I don't want to just go talk about how I used to do those 47 years ago when we rented downtown Neenah. That was a slight off-camber thing to...
But your younger
Someone in our
people are
club
even-
that, yeah.
Your younger people are even more into that than what you are.
It's a huge social thing. I mean,
Yes.
And when you joked that you joined because Bob is cool, that's a real thing. If one person joins, 10
really is cool.
10 other people join. We see that all the time, and you see that all the time. When
it's
one person-
part, you're making those personal connections. You have to be part of this community, be part of it. I mean, most everybody's pretty decent, but I don't come and hang out just because I want to go drive. It's because, well, I don't want to use Joel as a good example, but but it is.
This
It's
is
the
being
people
recorded.
you hang out with. It's you and Nick and and Brian and Jay and those people. It's the friendships. I mean, I look at how my Facebook group of people have, and the people I spend my time with, what they are, what the community they are, and it's those people. You get to know them, and you grow together, and you do things, and you go do stupid stuff together, and it's coming. What's that? Like polar plunging, jumping in stupid cold water for no really good reason.
Yeah.
So, and this is all good conversation, but again, I think we're getting away from the
Yeah.
topic of this group here. That's why you join Titletown or,
Yeah.
Wrangler Riders. Back to what this group's focus is the leaders of those groups driving the legislation.
I think we got into that, talking about funding.
Yeah, somehow we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's something we're gonna have to talk about, so we'll catch that quick in the next steps. But then, I think just to wrap up the notes here, one thing we did at the last meeting was we actually came up with a mission statement. I think we went through 3 or 4 different versions till we kind of agreed. Wanted it to be short and sweet and just say what our message was, and that's to advance legislation that provides recreational opportunities in Wisconsin for road legal 4-wheel drive vehicles.
Perfect.
Plain and simple, gets the point across. Of course,
Short
that
and-
was
short and
an
simple.
hour discussion coming up with that.
Yeah, it took a long time. It was
It was
an
long.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
long time to figure that all out.
So to the rest of the group here, I mean, I think that says what we want to do.
Did we do okay?
So then moving on to next steps, again, this has been all unofficial, just a couple of guys getting together, brainstorming, and started growing a little bit more. I mean, the first meeting was basically Ryan and I at his insurance office a couple of months ago, and I'm like, well, you know what, let's start involving some others. So I reached out to Joel and Sam, you know, and then that's when we decided, well, the next level is to reach out to some of the others. Jeep, Wisconsin Jeep Owners Group and Title Company, things like that. So. And I just threw these out here as notes. I mean, this isn't like an official agenda, but at some point we're probably going to have to get to that point. But I think we discussed last time that should form the board. You know, like we said, we needed a chairman and a couple other positions, otherwise everyone is equal. And even at that, everyone is equal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about is we don't want to turn these into elected positions, we do want to turn these into rotating positions, right? This isn't something that we
don't want to be a popularity contest.
do not. We want to make sure that every group feels that they're represented and that they not only have an opportunity to input, but they have an opportunity to lead in some way. So we are very, I guess, me more than, I'm just hypersensitive to us not turning this into a power thing, right? We're all here for common good, and the last thing we want to do is get there, because that's kind of been the downfall of so many of the other groups and things we've done. And I think we need to be very sensitive to that and make sure that if someone's the leader this year, he's not going to be the leader forever, or hold these positions, because that's just not what we need, right?
I think the only exception to that was maybe the treasurer position, so we're not changing banks every year. But even that, maybe we can work on that being a rotating basis, but we just keep the funds at one location. I know when I took over treasurer of Warpfee, I opened up an account with US Bank because they're everywhere. So if I wasn't the treasurer, John Doe could be the treasurer, but he's got a US Bank in his town as well. So it's, that way the funds are.
We're doing DMO right now, DMO Harris, and that worked out fine. There was one down by you guys, and there's one 2 blocks from my house. So that worked. And with the electronic thing now, that's really not that hard anymore. It's pretty easy.
So if we go with just a chairman, even though it's going to be a rotating annual thing, do you see any issue with that being not a good thing when you're going to start dealing with the state, because they don't see continuity? You're always changing people over.
Good question.
That's a very good question. I don't know that. That's when we can start calling people leaders. I'm going to guess that of the group that's sitting here, the person in this room that has more time to work on this than anyone else is Ryan. I'm sorry.
Which he's already kind of committed to.
Right, and
We're going down this road whether
Right.
this happens or not.
right.
This is.
Right, and so the reality of the situation is we can say whatever we want. I have a job and I'm not going to be able to be in Madison or do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't think like the chairman would be always the voice. I mean,
Right.
I think there's probably going to be one voice.
As long as the message never changes, I don't see where the problem is.
Yeah.
As long as it's a relationship business, to your point, if you keep turning that person over, you're breaking relationships.
Yeah,
that
and I don't
you
want to
start
see that.
over.
That's a bad idea.
But I can see why the idea came up of rotating.
Yeah.
I just think once you get into a filing status, you have to have some kind of structure.
You have to have somebody that subpoena could be delivered to.
Yeah. So how do we do this, that we achieve both goals? I mean, they're both good things. I don't, like I said, I want to make sure
Why couldn't we-
everybody feels like they're being represented. We don't want to turn it into an autocratic organization.
Why couldn't we name the person, the voice of the no, don't call him chairman or anything. This is the voice of the coalition and then have a structure under it, if we need something like that.
Well, I think we know who the voice is gonna be.
I mean, whoever wants to be in the limelight, I can feed it through a wire, or you can do it, whatever. Some people are gonna respond better to others. And personally, I don't have enough gray hair.
Do you
And-
have the the time, we know you'll have the commitment, do you have the time to
Well,
dedicate to it?
yeah, that's a real interesting topic.
We know the dedication is there.
The amount of time that I'm spending right now in growing Wrangler riders is substantial. It's already cut into a lot of my business time. And it's to the point now where I need to hand off the events I'm personally doing at the camp to, okay, Wrangler Rider Sheboygan needs to be its own chapter, run the park, run the events. If I'm gonna keep growing and, I'm already got my hands in a bunch of different locations with a bunch of different land managers, that's where I have to be. I have to be over there opening things up. I can't be running stuff on that side. So the goal, to be down in Madison, knocking on legislators' doors, showing them what we're going to be doing. Unofficially, some of that has already started to happen just by the relationships that we have in our family. I'm skirting the question because I'm
Well, you don't even have to
Doing a
give an
damn good
answer.
job of it.
You
ready
don't
for
even have
Madison
to give
already.
it, you don't even have to give an answer today.
You know,
It's very challenging because Wrangler Rider wasn't, like I said, we didn't name it because I did not want to compete with anybody here. I didn't want to say I'm going to be the voice of somebody who, that's just going to shoot you in the foot.
You got the great spokesperson thing going on too, but I think you'd be great at it. You have to restructure your household to have somebody else take some of that burden off you.
Yeah, it would be really, really great, but
I think one of
Honestly, Ryan, that's why we're here, though. We're not trying to turn this into the Wrangler Riders is pushing this. Right?
Oh, right.
Right, where this is to be, all of the groups together are doing it. The problem we have historically run into, and this isn't a negative thing, in fact, it's a compliment in my opinion. The only person we've had over the last 20 years who's been able to be relatively consistent at it is Luana. Right?
Lippy.
You know what I mean? And that creates all kinds of challenges, right? And we need to figure, and it's all for the same reasons, because most of us just can't. You were running into that exact thing right now. You're just articulating it, right? You get yourself.
You can spread yourself.
You
that
only
way.
have so much of you, right? And what are you going to devote that to? So I guess our feeling is, mine is anyway, that we all can contribute to this effort, but someone's got to be the guy who coordinates and sees it. And that's why the question was, or the de facto answer is you. Mainly because, well, a couple things. Well, first off, you have the passion and you have relationships that certainly I don't have, and nobody here has, right? Which will make this we'd have a lot better chance of success, if that makes any sense. Because
And he has an awesome mentor.
Well,
Huh?
who also has a lot of awesome mentors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure to have one central voice, but to be able to train the people that are supporting the leader to make them all leaders in that same voice, that's where that has to go.
Yeah.
So eventually my contacts will become your contacts.
Yep.
And we do that through the VIP ride. We do that through constant pushing of these videos and posts and magazine articles. And I mean, it's always an uphill battle to try to keep people informed of all that's happening. So what would be, I know what the workload's going to be, and it's going to suck.
Significant.
Lots.
But what would be action plan of that workload and how to integrate it into the spokespersons. Can they do it? You know, that's,
I think you got the support of everybody here, number one. And I think you gotta lean on those folks.
yeah.
Just because you can't be at a certain place at a certain time, doesn't mean that somebody else can't be there.
And I think that's the key to this group.
The success.
In general. And to a point you had made earlier, we all have to speak with the same message, right? And that way we can do that. That way, if I have to go somewhere and talk to someone, or Tim, or Bob, or Chris, or Luana, we already know what we're saying, right? So you don't have to do it every time. We can get ourselves as a group in a position where we can help, and we can help productively, not destructively, which has been a bit of our problems, right? So.
Yeah, what would the,
Maybe
for
we
the
need to
next
do
meeting,
homework.
define who and what the objectives of that spokesperson is, or what, you know.
Maybe that's the homework everybody come up with, and then brainstorm it and put
Yeah.
it together.
The job description.
Yeah, essentially. I'd write this down, but I got a secretary right here, so. You know, I wish this was done before we did Wrangler Riders. Because the tools that we're building on that platform, I'm like, well, this would be exactly what we needed over here, you know. But as one person, I can't,
You'll burn out.
Yeah.
We've seen it
but the
before.
success of what's happening right now is, yeah, I'm utilizing our family's contacts. I'm utilizing
We're
the
there for it.
20 years of reputation that we're not gonna do them wrong. And boy, that has a lot of keys and a lot of doors right now. Can we open them? Do they stay open? You know,
That's because your mentor started from nothing and built it, and the
Yeah.
reputation is there, the name is there,
when WAPA started, it was very similar. There was corruption, there was, you know, it was run by a lobbyist in Madison, and they literally invented it to get some things done. And it was pretty terrible. But
came around.
out of 330,000 registered ATVs, you know how many people are part of WAPA? It's like 2,000.
Oh,
That's terrible.
How many?
2,000. It's
Really?
terrible. Yeah, well, I mean, you have your club memberships, and then all the people in the club, I don't count that. I mean, I'm looking at just hard numbers of
what's in it
circulation
for-
of.
What's in it for me?
So there's a lot of different challenges that we're facing in this group. I don't want to get off on what the goal is. I always look at Tim, when we have to reel things back in, I look at his face, because he's like, you're
You're
getting
going down the
off.
wrong road.
All those years of facilitating, right?
But it's good discussion, so.
Yeah. Like I said, in the Wrangler Riders bylaws that are being formed right now, you know, our goal is doing what this is trying to do.
It's in everybody's.
Yeah.
That's why
right.
it's good that we're all sitting, you can look at everybody's bylaws and it all will say,
Something about expanding.
Should
and
promote
this is what we want to do. Everybody says that. Well, you know, so far
Take
we've
it off
all
the pot.
just not done it, so.
It's called TIME as part of it.
So getting back to the board, I mean, do we want to try and define this?
Let everybody come up with their ideas for the next meeting.
I do think you hit on a point. There's a couple of positions that are probably going to need to be fairly consistent. Whoever the treasurer is, person, you're right. You're not going to going through changing all of that is a pain in the ass.
It is.
So we'll have to get someone to think about who might wanna be willing to do that. Now, certainly at first, it's pretty easy, okay? The other one is, we do have, it's on your last one, for us to go much forward, we have to put something together under bylaws.
Right.
Okay? So I think that's something else somebody could look at, right? How do we maybe grab a bunch of bylaws from a bunch of different places and try to figure out what works and applies here?
How detailed do the bylaws need to be?
I don't know.
I would like to keep them simple.
Yeah.
Can
I
you
think
simple,
it
keep them vague,
depends
and
on
follow
what kind
that?
of status you have.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going just as a nonprofit, if you're going into the 501 territory, you have to be much more explicit on how everything is run.
Yeah.
And that, you had touched on the grants and that are out there.
Right.
I'm gonna assume
You're right.
that you have to be fairly structured to be
Very likely.
eligible for that.
Very
So I mean,
good.
if that's the route you wanna go, that kinda leads you which way you wanna run this group, I guess. I mean, if you're never gonna go to that point, then, you know, the grants are off the table type of deal.
I don't know what kind of organization this is.
Yeah, but
But I mean, moving forward, which way you wanna go, and once you get the money involved, everybody's gonna want it to be more structured.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion,
Yep.
because it is,
Yep.
you follow money everywhere.
Yep.
I guess, and that's right, I mean, we have to define a little bit more of the organization, but I know I've been part of a different group that the bylaws were, they just handcuffed you. That's what I'm saying, keep it simple. It's
Yep.
whatever the state requirements are, that's really all we need.
They're pretty simple, the state requirements are,
Right.
much less than
When
they used to be.
yeah.
You just gotta take a no more, no less approach to it and give them just what they need and.
Because once you start getting too defined, and that's gonna be a little different for this group, because we're not a group, we're a coalition, but, you know, when you got to the point where you have to do X amount of events, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, voting status, it just got to be too much.
Our folks who are not listed here right now, somehow or another that they're not listed here, are they gonna resent this somehow? And it's what you were kind of alluding to before. Somehow we have to get the word that it's for all, and does the mission say that? So that all four-wheel drive recreation is not, you know, so that they don't think, well, I'm not one of these people, so it doesn't
Yeah,
include me.
we talked about that a little bit, and again, nothing's been like cut in stone here yet, but, for example, Wisconsin four-wheel drive represents a number of four-wheel drive clubs.
Right.
So we would use Wisconsin four-wheel drive as that conduit of communication to those other groups to keep them in the loop on what's going on. Others that are just out there on their own, yeah, there's gonna have to be some communication to those groups as well.
Is it realistic to add one thing to the mission statement, say, for all road legal four-wheel drive vehicles? Would that help us at all?
What does that add?
Yeah.
All, just
Where are we
allowing, gives people
It
who,
infers all, I would think.
I think, Alana, I think it implies all, because we don't,
Okay.
because we don't exclude.
The next question, you read that mission statement, the next question in your head should be, what is a road legal four-wheel drive? Why is it defined that way? Never seen it that way. And that should be the next question. But as an outsider looking in, that's how I read that.
what?
What is it?
What is a road legal four-wheel drive? Why is, as an ATV guy, what? This doesn't read ATV to me, this doesn't read motorcycle to me. And that's good, it shouldn't.
Right. You wanted
But
to
it
say
doesn't
licensed?
define what that is.
You wanted to say licensed?
The road legal says that, road legal.
Can-
That's what I kind of figured.
Yeah.
I would read it as a four-wheel drive vehicle.
But would you see it as a UTV?
It doesn't say it.
That's good.
Doesn't say I can take my snowmobile either.
And that's the message we were going for.
Right.
Right, to not be too,
Right.
The word legal explains.
yeah. That's why it took us freaking forever to do this, but yeah.
Well, that's.
Pretty important part.
Yeah, but then again, you're trying to exclude some of them by the measurements and weight.
Yep,
So,
we are. We honestly are.
yeah, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I think the clarity here is not necessarily there then.
And we talked about some people being put off. And we don't want to do that either, and that's why we should understand, as we get going forward, we should understand amongst ourselves what that means. So when the questions come up, we can answer why we said this, why
And
not.
I mean, we know we're excluding the buggies. We know
Well,
we're excluding
Right,
the pipeline runners on tractor tires.
right.
Those, initially, when Ryan and I first met, I'm like, we gotta include these guys. I was for
Right,
all
the same.
inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
But just as we had open dialogue, it's like, you know what, that's a very small minority. And let's get this going first, because it's gonna be easier to palate with the legislators. And then at some point, if there is a large enough voice for those other groups, maybe we can go to bat for them at that point.
I would think
But right up front, to try and say, we're gonna do it for everybody, it's gonna be a tough
And
sell.
the reality is, there's some bad connotations that have been
Absolutely,
put forward
absolutely.
with that group. And,
And we're grouped in it when you talk
and I
forward.
don't, everybody can watch TV on Saturday and see the rock bouncers, right? Tearing up the side of the hill. That isn't what we want to be seen as, right? Because that'll set people backwards before we ever get through the door, right? So, if we're ever gonna get anything for those people, it'll be after we get this. And I don't know that what we're saying is, most of the legislation we're gonna go after will probably not affect them terribly anyway, because they go to parks already.
Right.
And
So
I'm
this
not
might
saying we don't
benefit
want a
them
park.
in the long run.
Great, I still want a good park,
Right.
don't get me wrong, but this has to do with trails and the legislative side of things, which is a little different, is what that's gonna provide versus an off-road park.
It's fine.
I mean,
You're
parks-
providing a fundraising mechanism for parks and.
Right, right.
And if you
We're not-
concentrate on one park, you'll never get it.
We're not excluding parks or trails, it's whatever, that's why I'm kind of cautious to say, whatever opportunities present themselves, right? Whether it's a trail or if it's a park.
I can sell this in Madison. I can't sell Redneck Yacht Club.
So back to what you were asking earlier about defining road legal, we haven't really got it down on paper.
I
It's not
drafted
on
it in
these
our
ones.
group, we
Yeah.
drafted it in our group, we
Right.
built our trails to those specifications, and actually last weekend, those specifications were challenged.
Yes, they were.
We had one that was at the max, pretty much, it was a GMC, half ton.
The one I bought.
and we built those trails for the short wheelbase, tight turning vehicle. It had a very tough time doing those trails. And that's exactly what we wanted it to do. So, when you get to the max length of these types of trails, you're not gonna see a Hummer on here. You're not gonna see the six-wheel Army vehicle on there, you know.
Well,
But it's not on paper, is my problem.
well, it's just
And I'm
not on
not
these-
saying,
yeah.
It's not on
I'm
this
not
one.
saying,
Just not on our notes
okay,
here.
and does
But-
everybody
but-
in here know what those specs are now?
I put our draft on, you go to WranglerRiders.com, it's
Right.
the second thing. It's, what is a road legal four-wheel drive? And
Great, next
it's
meeting.
the whole thing, I should probably, yeah.
Okay, is that what everybody knows, is familiar with them?
And see, part of me, from the outside, I guess, is this separate from Wrangler Riders?
Yes.
Because that's not where the answer should be, in my opinion. If this is the Road Legal Four-Wheel Drive Coalition, then there almost needs to be a separate entity, and that's great, that's what you guys are building off in this, and that's testing it and all and that. But that's where the confusion comes in too, is what is what
You're
here?
absolutely right.
Will there ever be
Ryan?
a separation if I'm chairing this? Or if I'm leading this thing? I mean, I'm to the core, you're never gonna see me anything else than the Wrangler Rider guy. We've built that relationship with as many people as we already have.
So I bet everybody here knows what those breakdown is and agrees with it. That's all I'm asking.
I haven't seen it, but I'm new to it, so.
Yeah, so,
We discussed it last time,
Okay.
we talked about it, there were actually was,
Okay.
you know.
He's got it there.
Yeah, my only question, I think, in the beginning was the weight, you put it at 6,500, which you touched on the bridges and that, where the lift laws and all that apply to 8,000 and less. I was just wondering why wouldn't you just pick that number? You know, because then technically you're excluding a range of road legal. You know, I can see getting the buggies and the tractor tires and all that out, but there's,
We guessed.
sure,
you know,
yeah,
well, I mean, that's just a
And
question.
maybe,
That, you
maybe
know,
that isn't right.
yeah.
you know, I'm not saying right or wrong, it's just,
But that
it's
was
stuff that comes up.
part of the reason we all wanted to get you here and Cindy here and other people here is so it didn't just be
Us
us telling you.
Yeah,
If-
that's a
if-
that's a very good point.
If 6,000 is wrong or 6,400, what should it be 8?
You know, how many crew cab Duramaxes are gonna be out there, the weight limit, but, you know, you're just looking at it paper-wise, the specs, that's where road legal is. You know, you refer to the laws for the lift laws, well, this is where they classify them, 8,000 and below. And I mean, is it gonna hurt if they're 8,000 besides, you know, and it's still under the
Yeah,
bridge
I mean,
limits?
if that's already in state statute, that 8,000's in there, it would make sense logically to me if this synced with that. You know what I mean?
You know, and
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
But an
Because
8,000
nowhere is there
pound,
gonna be a scale.
an 8,000 pound trail machine, what is the trail impact of that extra weight? So,
Depends how
all
they use
depends on the
it.
skinny pedal.
that, yeah, I mean,
Yep.
And how many 8,000-pound
tire
vehicles?
size, weight distribution, you know,
Well, and looking down the road, if it comes to a trail system and you take a big vehicle, we found out on March of Dimes, you might not bring it back the second time because depends how you want to use it or abuse it,
Or you might not be invited back.
depending
Well,
on how you use it or abuse it.
to some of the clubs that already, you know, did the UTV thing, the 6,500 was a little bit closer to what the UTV was. I'm like, look, you didn't have any problem with the UTV. It's a cow. It doesn't move on the trail like it, you know, you don't have a safety issue in a lot of these type areas. This is just a little bit more than that. You know, in my mind, I was going in the sales pitch way. So, like I said, we just literally picked a number that wasn't too high. As long, you know, it's under the 14,000 pound bridge thing. Well, I don't anticipate actually being able to use any of those bridges. There'll be so much
That's kinda my
opposition.
thought, too, that
I don't.
your
It'll
best
be
bet
way
is to
easier
stay
to just
away
use a
from
road. Yeah, get
four-wheel
on the
trails.
road and just
Yeah.
go around. But,
Anything ATV, snowmobile, horse trails, cross country, to win them over,
yeah. you're-
opposite end.
Yeah.
You just,
I'm not
it's a
sure
battle.
about that with horse trails.
What's that?
I'm not sure about that with horse trails. Horse trails.
Well, or bike scooter.
You don't wanna be buying them.
Bike scooter.
Well, I think that weight limit, maybe we look at the length and width a little bit more, but since we're doing road legal, we should probably follow a little bit more of the DOT guidelines.
Yeah, as long as, you know, totally, we're basically, on our Wrangler Rider side, we're gonna sync with whatever this group says. So,
Well, and you don't have to.
I guess.
Again, that's, like you say, your heart is in the Wrangler Riders, you know, mine's in the Woven, that,
Let's
again, why we're here.
let's flesh out what Bob said. Is there a reason we wouldn't want to go to 8,000? Well, where would we go wrong if we did that? Is there a way to go wrong with that way?
how are we building, well, we don't know, we don't have any trails.
See, I think that weight-wise, I mean, that's, your weight, anything that big is literally your crew cab, 3/4 ton pickup trucks, but your half-ton crew cabs are the same size and meet that weight limit. So your trails would be more impacted by the length than the weight. You know, and like we said before, a Wrangler can tear up the trails just as bad as any heavy truck. It all comes down to the driver.
I don't know that
principles.
will a crew cab long bed, 8,000 pound vehicle fit the length limit that we have? Is there a vehicle like that?
Yeah.
Well, the 190 inches, if you look at most of the
that-
manufacturer's specs, carves out anything past a standard cab truck,
That's overall dimensions, that's not,
that's front to
Okay.
back, yeah, front to back.
So, like, Swearingen's always talks about his Land Cruiser. Now it's an 8,000 pound Land Cruiser. Well, dimensions and width work. He must have a shitload of armor and stuff on there. But I'm just like, but he says it's 8,000 pounds. I don't know what a Land Cruiser starts out at, but I mean,
that's when they built a lot of steel.
well, that's true. It is in the 70s, but
And how are we gonna enforce this?
well,
We're not.
not.
And
We're not gonna be able to. I'm not
So
gonna be able to
that's
look
the-
at,
that's-
I'm not gonna be able to look at that Land Cruiser and be like, that's 2,000 pounds.
Well, the point is that Land Cruiser didn't roll off the showroom at 8,000.
yeah. So you go off.
Yeah, but are we talking about net or gross?
Yeah.
I
We're
think
not.
it comes back to the saleability to legislators.
Right.
What our focus is with these
Right.
specs.
Right, and that's,
Well, and they're gonna know what the statutes say.
We can take a lot of opposition wind out of their sails by just saying,
They gotta be
these
well-
definitions are already in the books by the lift laws that are already in place. That's, the statute's already there.
Right.
Oh, okay, you know,
They're
oh,
gonna know that.
If you have public trails, it's not our job to enforce.
Right.
That's where the rangers
if you got a
come in and
tag
all
on,
that. That's up to
that's
them.
all we can really
Yep.
do. You got your license, that's with you and the DOT.
Good point.
so I guess then the question is, by doing what we did we do something that would make you have to have a sideways argument?
Yeah, we should be synced with the current laws that are already in
Laws,
place.
So what you're saying is you should probably move that to 8,000.
That would be,
If that's what the statute says.
Yeah.
99% positive it's 8,000 and less.
Well, he's backing down now, so.
99.9.
799.
Does the
So-
statute have anything about length?
Let's do this, I mean, without being something formal, let's make that a task, so one owner does the research on that, and next time we get back together, that owner of that task can say, here's what it is.
Bob's working on it.
All
It's
vehicles
actually
driven in
already-
Wisconsin restricted to a maximum width of 102, maximum height of 13 foot 6 inches, maximum single length vehicle of 40 foot. That's, your semis and all that, that's where they define everything.
I
into
think
the
maybe we
vehicle.
don't want that.
But, I mean, that's what they define as their limits.
Yeah.
There's, the smaller stuff, they don't define what can fit on a trail.
Right.
But with the 4x4s, the lift laws, of 8,000 pounds or less.
Okay. Cool. That was easy enough. There's some back there. You don't have to do that for homework.
Perfect.
But we still, are we sticking with the 90, 190?
we literally threw that out there. In our forums, we were like, how about this? Well, how about this? Well, it excluded that. Okay, then how about this? And we just kept doing that until we came up with these numbers. We don't want the big, huge, I mean, if you make a vehicle and you have to cut trail for things past a certain width, you are no longer be able to, you can't snake between the big trees anymore. Now you gotta take them down. We wanna avoid
No.
that. So,
8 feet.
Well, Lake was that when they went from CJ's to JK's. So, yeah, you don't want to be putting yourself in
Damn
that
limos.
Damn limos.
then you got land managers saying, and then the costs just go poof.
Yeah.
So, if we can snake between what's already there, sweet. But, yeah, but I don't have a good answer for, these lengths and widths are still just drafts, so.
Well, you gotta start somewhere, so
Yeah.
keep
And
the.
that's exactly right. I mean, maybe this will be the first thing, and then, well, we found out after doing it, we need to include a second thing. Again, ATV, UTV, that's how they did it.
You can't include everybody at one time. You gotta start with a core group and build.
It has to be something that Ryan can stand in front of them and make an argument that isn't so convoluted that they get tired and walk away.
Well, and we gotta sell this to land managers too.
Yeah.
So they pay more attention to that than I think the political side will, but.
Well, and also, you're talking about a land manager, if a DNR vehicle can fit down the proposed trail,
Oh, that's a good point. Because they all use the big half tons.
long box,
But they also have, I mean, they could run that same vehicle down the ATV trail without, they don't need.
Right.
They can, it's a
Right.
state vehicle, so they don't have to follow these anyway,
Yeah. But I mean, if they can make it down the trail, then,
right?
A lot better chance making it down our trail than they will make.
Well, if we build level 3 trails, something that is challenging for a stock vehicle with some bigger tires. If we're doing crawling trails, no groomer's gonna fit down it, no emergency vehicle's gonna fit down it. We are building trails that are literally only accessible by these types of vehicles. So there's a lot of different things that we're going to have to address in that regard.
Yeah, and a lot of that's gonna have to be in the legislation.
Well, like, you know, like I said, the trail ambassador thing, trying to get involved with where the eyes and the ears of the DNR wardens and, you know, promoting and pushing the safety part and that kind of stuff. That could definitely be a challenge. That was a good point.
So lots of cool, neat, good questions.
Yeah,
What now?
that we wouldn't get if we were 3 people or 5 people. This is why this works.
Maybe this is premature, but has anybody done any research as of yet as to who might sponsor such legislation? Because what I understand is, don't they kind of take over and start writing with the concepts that we have
We have
thought
to-
of?
We have to outline it pretty precisely.
Outline it? Okay.
And we all have to write off on it before that step out there.
So are we, has anybody got any leads on legislators that would?
I would not feel comfortable presenting anything at this
Well, you
time.
wouldn't be presenting, I'm just
I mean,
saying,
even
have interest.
concepting, you know, they were delighted that we're all getting together around a round table. That's the formation, that's the hardest thing to do.
I understand.
So, they are waiting on us, though.
The they. That's what I guess I was asking, is there is some theys out there.
I think what's good too is having Luana on the State Trails Council to have extra ears there for us.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that.
Took a long time to get the off four-wheel drive truck community represented on that.
I'm gonna go to those meetings too. I'm gonna be there to help you on that side. And Brian Much and the others know it too, so.
You know, they're aware, of course, yes.
We've
Yeah,
been
Brian's
silent.
definitely a proponent of ours.
Our sport has been silent for too long.
We're the original motorized silent sport.
Yep, we don't make any noise going through the wood.
Except that pickup
That big
truck.
truck. You're a mile away.
Not yesterday. I'm just-
What do we want to do? So, getting back together next time, we'll have an agenda to actually create an official board. We'll make
I
that
think that'll
an
probably take
agenda
us
item.
the whole meeting.
I think we need to do that sooner than later.
Right, I mean, I was kind of hoping we could hash that out today. I don't know that it's necessarily that difficult if basically everyone's equal.
But we don't
Other than a couple.
have, some of the user groups aren't here yet. They have to watch the video, and I would feel more comfortable them saying yay to that, and don't miss the next one.
Yeah.
I would leave,
Yeah.
just thoughts.
I think so. Let's do that. Let them see it, let everybody know it, and then let's hit it next time. Maybe we can have more than one thing on the agenda too. Maybe we should try, what would be the next thing we do after that, I guess?
Filing status, I would
Well,
think,
I
or
think
bylaws.
bylaws first.
Yeah.
But
And it
we-
might-
We have to know what filing they almost go together, don't we? We have to know what filing status we're gonna be to coordinate our bylaws accordingly.
We hardly can be a 3, because we won't make the 20%, will we? I mean, we don't do enough other stuff. This group doesn't do enough other
The
stuff.
whole focus of this group is to.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
you're dead on.
Yeah, we aren't gonna have enough other things to make it, even though that they moved it to 20%.
You're only supplying support to a very specific, it's not for a whole, it's not for the public.
Right.
Sort of is,
Yeah,
but-
their status is dedicated to lobbying, and that's what we're gonna fall into. I don't know what that is.
Well, I think if everybody goes back and does a flow chart or something on board structure and does some research on where they think the filing status, where we would fall, then we'll have all our material to discuss at the meeting. You know, because you might think it falls under one, and you might think it falls under another, and I may think it falls under another.
It should be pretty black and white, go right down to the websites that have all the definitions,
Right.
so they can right down the letter.
But everybody, figure out where they think we fall.
One other thing though, I know we talked about funding, but what about, we're gonna need some money to get it kicked off before we can go solicit from others. I think some of the discussions at the other meetings is Wisconsin 4-wheel drive and we'll, maybe some of the other groups in a position to kick in some seed money to get this thing going.
They're gonna ask for what the budget is.
I was gonna say, we're gonna have to tell them what we're gonna do
We gotta
with that
define
money.
a budget for an expected expenditures for the first quarter or whatever we think for people to make an informed decision. Because they're not gonna know.
Well, I would surely think that Wisconsin would be willing to, I'm not representing Wisconsin necessarily, but I would think, that there definitely would be some funding available there if this was to go through. I think the thing that we all have to kind of be careful of or make the people very aware of is that this is a coalition, and we have a very serious objective here that they all should be supportive of, and that it's not going to be another one of these promises that
Right.
gets
One of their
way over.
biggest questions right off the bat is gonna be what kind of a budget's gonna take to keep this afloat. That's the first thing that always comes up.
And is it real? I mean, everybody's a little burned right now on other things that have
Yep.
occurred, so they're more suspicious or cautious or however you want to say it. So we have to be real careful, and I think be very transparent.
Mhm.
Talking money right now would be a turnoff.
Yeah, I don't
To a lot of groups, it's not solidified enough yet.
Then the first thing you bring up is give us money and they're done listening.
Yeah, and I don't
And we'll
know,
tell you then
who
what
are,
we'll
Jim,
do
do you
for
think
you.
we're
Yeah,
anywhere
I've
where
never
we
heard of
Need
this.
cash at this
We don't,
point?
I don't think we need cash right now. I don't, and I don't think we should ask for cash until, to Ryan's earlier point, until we have some definite thing
Right.
to ask for cash for, that we can stand in front of the people that we're asking it of with a, this is what I plan to do with the money if you give it to me, right? This is where I'm gonna spend it. Is that okay?
Well, I think,
Yeah.
though, Tim's, we have to, even filing is going to cost some money. I don't know what it costs, but I do know it.
$35 with the
It's
state IRS is, you don't have to define it yet. You got 30 months to define it.
35?
$35 for the state to form a nonprofit through the Department of Revenue.
I'll
And then if you
I'll
want
donate
the
$35.
charitable, dedicate,
35 bucks.
that's $15 extra, or I think it's something like that.
Okay.
15 bucks extra.
So we're looking
Yeah.
under $100.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but
All right.
it's,
We got $35.
I'll pick up aluminum
I think
cans.
we're good.
You gotta, well, the snow's gone now, so
I can find some aluminum cans now for the snow's gone.
Okay,
that's
I
your
didn't
job.
realize
It's a
this.
good idea, yes, keep this simple, too many times I've heard bad things, and because of whatever structure there was, it wasn't, it turned too many people off, so. I feel positive with this group, it's represented well. I think we're all gonna watch over each other?
I have a question. I hadn't heard anything about this group until the Wisconsin meeting a couple weeks ago when Sam asked me to step in for him. Can I put it out to my other vice presidents for the regions? We have a region A, which is up in the northwestern part of the state. We're region C here, and region B is like Milwaukee and south. Can I do that?
Do you
Or
need
would
to
you
be
rather
formed?
not?
Do you need to be
I
an
think-
organized?
I just want to know
Entity.
if I can reach out to my
Well,
other vice presidents. and
It's
tell them
not
about
about trying to
this.
keep it under the
Okay.
table, I think it's more of a,
Well,
we're still at an informal
that's
basis.
what I would say.
You know, we're still just brainstorming at this point.
Because what's gonna happen is exactly what happened when we mentioned it to you and to you. Well, tell me all about it. Shit, I can't.
Well, no,
We
no.
just started.
Okay, well, that's what I would
You know,
present.
yep.
You know, we're having these meetings, we're just in the infant stages of presenting this. I want you, as the vice president and assistant vice president in your region, to know what it is. Because the more, when, you know, and if they want to reach out to the clubs in their area, hey, this is what we're working on. I think if we can educate people and let them know, I mean, not details or anything, just this is what we're doing, these are the representatives, we're working on a structure right now, and, you know, just, I didn't want to do it before I asked.
Well, and it wouldn't hurt to get maybe some of their input and questions through back to you know, just to bring to the group. But
And the other thing, I wanna make sure that we aren't missing somebody who should be at this table. We just used what we could think of, right?
this is a good point.
And we don't, I know, we maybe don't know everybody. There's a whole, frankly,
There's a lot of other people
there's
outside
a
of
lot
this
of other
room.
people in Wisconsin that we don't know. That
That
could be
might
doing
have
all
a
kinds of
certain
things.
skill set
Yeah.
that
We
would
do.
benefit this group.
Mhm. And I guess that's another question, if we know anybody, we need to identify them, so we include them.
Keep those two.
Like I said, we just pick the people.
Right. Well, you gotta start somewhere.
I said, who do I know who has a fairly big following? Who are the,
Movers and shakers.
yeah, and that's,
As of today.
Also, I think your point is very good because, again, we don't need them hearing it on the sidelines. We need to be upfront with, so that they aren't starting to talk about things that aren't really the facts.
And come up with their own ideas of what it
Right.
is.
Right.
So, you know, be short and simple.
Transparency is an important thing.
I guess to touch on that, where you want to extend it out to all of them, and that's great, because I think you got to include everybody. But,
This would only be would be 6 people.
well, I mean, and then it
Right.
spirals out from there. But what
no, I'm good.
is that public statement? You know, because I'm going to go back. Titletown, you know, when we talk about it, they're going to ask, well, what exactly are they doing, or what exactly is their point? You know, you can say the legislative part, but, yes, please. But what exactly, you know, are they going for the public trails? Are they going for a park? Are they going for the sticker program? What, you know, if you don't, well, it says opportunities, which, yeah, doesn't limit you to anything, but then also you're trying to explain that to somebody is just whatever pops up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's I guess just trying to have, like, if we all have to have the same voice, exactly, you know, so that you're not going back and telling somebody something, and then I'm telling a slightly different version
Yeah.
over here as we're trying to represent,
Yeah.
you know, the group.
Yeah.
That goes back to the point we made earlier, is we need that common message.
Mhm.
So that it's ingrained in all of us, so that when we ask that question, everyone's got the exact same answer.
You know, you can say, well, they're gonna work on the Madison stuff and the paperwork. Exactly, well, what? You know,
And I think you and I are on the same page because we just came into it now.
Yeah.
And the-
We're all on that page. We're
Right.
all-
Yeah.
We're one meeting ahead.
We're one
of
meeting- I got a whole
Okay.
week into this.
This literally started last October,
There's a
so Ryan and I
October
just had
before
a
that.
informal meeting at his place, and then we had one more, and
So is there something besides saying we're working for legislation that we should have in our our message going away from today, so we do say all the same thing. Is there something that we should focus on?
To say that it's not formal yet,
Yeah,
that we need the representatives from each organization to be here.
yeah,
That it's crucial. Right now, this is the crucial part. You gotta be here,
yeah.
because we have to move.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to say each organization.
Well, you know what I mean?
You know what I
if people are gonna be at the roundtable, they need to be here.
The players.
This is, yeah, we're finding new groups, like weekly almost, of just groups of buddies that got together, go wheeling.
That's how all the clubs started.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just a more informal that
Well,
they're
and now,
meeting
and
together
nowadays
now.
with Facebook, that can happen even easier than it ever did in the past.
Right. Before it was word of mouth.
Um,
Yeah, you almost need a Facebook page, and then you can get the word out pretty quick by just a public post looking for people to, if you're part of a club in Wisconsin, you guys are following, contact us if you're interested in what we're doing. And you'll find out who's out there. They're all gonna see it on Facebook.
You know,
I mean, we've got the Facebook page set up right now, but it's private.
that's a group. That's not-
But that's the group, if you come up with an actual
Yeah.
page where only you're conveying the message out, they can send you messages and you can answer the questions and all that, but yeah, to put out an actual, well, they go 4-wheel drive page.
I mean, it could be just as, it could be as broad as a press release stating our things, and we all share it to our groups.
Absolutely.
Pretty much, because that makes it easier, if, you know, we go back and we share what was posted on that page versus what you ran into, you posting, you know, all this stuff, that if it comes from everybody sharing one page versus coming from Ryan, you know,
Yeah.
it looks better, you know, and then you don't run into people that just, you know, well, he just posted all, you know, they don't know, but if they see this group and this group and this group and this group are all following along, it helps out a lot.
To catch some of you up to speed, I have posted a lot on the Wisconsin Jeep Owners Group and other groups. And because we're literally doing an event every 2 weeks, it's getting old. People are getting intolerant of our activity because we're posting,
loud.
it's too often.
Too loud.
Oh,
We're very loud within the community in that regard.
I saw your,
So I'm like, oh, time to take a step
One
back.
person's grabbing it, and it's like, my phone is just not stopped today. It's like, I'm up at 100 posts. We had so many people, I guess, everyone's grabbing it, everyone's posting it, it's hitting everybody's pages. It's driving people nuts. You gotta be sensitive to that.
So right off the bat, we're 6 months into this thing, or 8 months into this thing. And
now this is my ignorance on Facebook, but can you just make it like an informational site where people can't reply back?
Sure.
I don't know.
Basically, that's the page versus the group. You know, we can all be added to a group where the page is just more or less informational. They can usually post on stuff that is posted. They can comment on it. You can shut it off. You can do whatever.
Okay.
But then they can also send messages to that page if they have a question about it, which then, you know, and it's got the description so you can spell out everything, you know, that you want to and kind
Or you
of give
can
all
make
the
it
information
nothing.
right there.
Or you can make it nothing, just a single informational
Yeah.
type. I think that's what we would want to begin with, because if you're getting
Just
garage,
put
you're ready.
contacts in there for interest. They have to be able to reach out to the coalition. So you just got that you want to encourage, but yeah, you want to keep it under control.
What we do as a club, because of issues with the Facebook, is we just have on there information as to what the club, that the club exists, and an access to our website. So if they want more information, they can go there, and then from there, they can get a
the nice
contact.
thing about a Facebook page is you can put events and things on there which are easily anybody who uses Facebook, that's very handy. You can get involved in an event pretty easily. I think we should get a page. I'm not going to say that. We should probably make a page. That way it doesn't all have to come through Ryan and then he doesn't get too loud. Because that really is what it really boils down to. Is he's pretty much on there, and sure enough, Wisconsin Jeep Owners Group got put off by the fact that he was louder than they were on their own.
In their own group.
In their own group, right, so,
But it's Facebook, it blows over in 2 weeks, but.
yeah, so,
On our Facebook page, we'll have to define things fairly well to call out the hundreds of people that are responding back that really don't fit the mold that we're after.
I don't think we want a response back yet.
well, I.
No, right now, I mean, all your information
Informational.
just has to be that this is, like you said, in the infant stage, this is what is happening.
We are unlikely to blow up like you guys are, because once again, you're doing a lot of stuff, right? A lot of events, a lot of things going on. This group won't have that much energy.
Can I kind of be frank and off the record a little bit here? That's unfortunate, very unfortunate that,
Then more people won't jump on board. It should blow
well,
up.
you know, right.
Have the interest.
You know, I really, really regret naming this thing Wrangler Riders, because if this would have happened first, I would have been like, what are we gonna call this thing? I'll help out and do whatever. I can't run 2 of these though. I can't
I know
be,
you
I can't, if it's splitting like this, I'm gonna have a conflict of interest, B, no time to do anything, C, my wife will divorce me. You know, these are things
should have been
that.
the
That should have been the first.
But it's on video.
Yeah, it's a very long one.
But to, you know, and he is my sounding board all the time, poor Regan. But I'm like, wouldn't it be great if we could figure out how all of our memberships were in one universal thing? Or like your membership is good at my event and who cares who you're a part of, as long as you're a part of it and we're doing stuff together. That's really what we're trying to do. You know, we're smart enough people, we can make this work somehow. Let's make it work. I don't care how. But we had to choose this name to avoid the drama of potentially, you know, I couldn't foresee what we were going to compete against or who we were going to piss off right off the bat by doing something. So that it's a very, very big frustration that plays in the back of my mind that we have a lot of really great people here that we have all these different memberships and all this different stuff, and
Don't get too frustrated.
we've
We've been frustrated for a long time.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. You're living where we've lived all along. I think this is our first best attempt
Yes.
at fixing it, so, I'm actually excited that we're actually maybe gonna be successful. We've been many runs at this and many falls, so, what I meant by my original statement is we're not gonna be as busy as you, we aren't as busy yet. It isn't, in the short term, our group isn't gonna be as busy on a Facebook event, right? We're the overarching group, and we're not gonna have, I just don't see us getting as busy as you.
We're not the fun stuff.
We're not the fun stuff.
Yeah, again, this is
Right.
not meant to be a membership base or
Right.
an
Right.
event base.
Right.
Again, we all have those going on, but as leaders of those other associations and groups,
Yes,
we're trying to come
Yeah.
together just for one specific goal.
right, and I think.
Once that goal is met, then what? I mean, that's a whole other discussion.
We'll decide that
I
when
hope
we
we,
get there.
I hope we can have that
Good
concern.
problem to have.
Yeah. But to your point, this should be a place where everybody can come, but that's what it is. Everybody is still everybody.
Right.
It allows us all to be,
unified.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Well, and your first point when you opened the meeting was, if we're gonna get legislation, we have to be a unified front.
Mhm.
Because your snowmobile association is made up of clubs, so
Yeah.
we have associations that meet with them.
700 of them that can't agree on anything.
Yeah, Dave?
I mean, the political side that we learned what not to do
Yeah.
on some of that stuff.
Yeah,
And all we have to do is look at other groups and how they worked.
They used to be the strongest voice, and they've,
snowmobile?
yeah.
Absolutely.
They've
They were the
gone
first
downhill.
trail system.
They paved the way for everybody
They
in
did.
almost everything.
So I think it's pretty much unanimous. We need a Facebook page. I don't know if it's like tomorrow, but fairly soon, when it sounds.
you don't have to do it. I heard him say.
I know somebody else in the room.
Yeah,
that
well,
can
there's a
take care
couple
of
of us that are Facebook savvy enough to do this. You don't have to.
that.
How
Yeah.
about us that are not at all, say, Facebook savvy?
That's okay. Well, there's a couple of us that are good enough. Maybe not as good as him, but good enough, so.
You got nominated.
He nominated you, I didn't.
All in favor?
I didn't say any names, but I definitely had someone in mind.
You're glaring this way.
Always interested in helping until I screwed up too bad that.
That we throw you out.
Yeah,
That takes a lot.
that's when I've had enough, when I screwed up intentionally enough, so. Sure.
Making a page is,
It's pretty simple.
yeah.
But if you do it wrong off the bat,
Yeah,
No pressure.
right.
Well,
That might be something.
having to
where-
back up
No,
right
what,
away would be.
it would be the,
Could we come up with a press release or a statement of that first?
and that would be,
That would be,
yeah, and that
then
would
you
be
can
what
copy
you
and
would put
paste
on
that.
there, and then, I mean, I don't see anything more than, here's what the statement is, here's the mission statement, here's what we're thinking, and then there's the picture of the RL4WD.
Is there any,
All you need right now.
is there any realism to find, for people to know who those people are that are sitting on this? Does that give it some
At least the
credibility?
group names that are behind it. That would give it clout, group names
I would say
would.
It's yes and no, because you want, obviously, to know who's involved, but then
Yeah.
you run the risk of, why wasn't I invited to this type of deal? But
Well, we have to have an invitation in there
But-
for them too.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the first message we broadcast.
But, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I just think, well, okay, what's this group about?
But in the
Okay,
end of the
what is
press
their
release
rea-
of what we have, to have a call to action would probably be on that line. Not to say who we are or what groups are involved yet, but I don't know.
And then our individual clubs and associations, we begin using words like RL4WD, things like that, and get people used to what you're
Yeah.
talking about. And you have a chance to talk to the people you're influential with, and,
That was the
they're still gonna have
nobody
questions.
listens to me.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I don't think we will ever be able to include everybody who wants a voice, if we're gonna
That's
get
the problem.
everything done.
But if you get the majority of them, they will have to follow suit to be on track with what we're doing.
It's gonna give them credibility then.
Yeah.
Other questions, concerns, comments? We were going on 2 hours at this point.
1 hour and 52 minutes.
So I guess it would be like, when would the next meeting be? What's the agenda gonna be, or who's gonna set up an agenda? Et cetera. Like two things.
I've kind of been described thus far, so I'll work on an agenda.
Good job.
I'll start a press release, bounce it off a few people, and then we can prove it at the next one.
So,
Do you want me to put this private video in the Facebook private page so that,
So I can go back for reference.
yeah, do you want me to list it as private or unlisted, so in case somebody has to share it with somebody? Yeah, I can't share it to the Facebook group if it's a private, because it has to be by email. So it would have to
Can
be,
you put it somewhere with
it's
a link for
unlisted.
me?
Unlisted or secret, right?
Yeah,
It would have to, well, our group is secret on Facebook already.
right.
And I got
So if I post an unlisted video in that secret group, there's enough trust with the people that we have here that that won't be spread too far. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So otherwise, if you have to really lock down that video, then I gotta get everybody's email addresses and.
I don't think you have to worry, because there's probably not that many people that are gonna watch a 2-hour video anyways.
Pretty boring.
Nobody's got that kind of attention.
Anything after 3 minutes is supposed to be enough.
I mean, the
Too
only
much.
people I'd like to get to see it is like Cindy, who couldn't make it, so she can see it. I'm sure she has an opportunity to watch it if she does. That's 2 hours she doesn't want, her life she could throw away.
But as we start with just the basic page thing, we've seen that's on our group page, the logo, the looks like a gear shift with the RL4WD. That's,
Yeah.
I would just copy that and put it on there.
Okay.
Yeah, that, you sent me something like that.
I still have it.
She read it somewhere last year.
Yeah, well, we'll use the group to come up with something nice. I'll just be the guy that copies and pastes.
Do you want to talk on the Facebook group for the next meeting, or do you want to try to decide that now?
What's the problem with just putting,
Yeah.
we'll just need the information? I mean, right now, if you were to put your page out, you would have the mission statement.
You're gonna have to put a definition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as far as the Facebook page itself.
No, I was just trying to say, when is our
This
next
next
meeting?
meeting.
Right.
Yeah, next meeting.
I just opened up the calendar here, so.
In
So
all
do I.
reality, dealing with enough of these meetings and that on other things, pick a day and go with it.
Yeah.
You try to accommodate 20 people's schedules, it turns into a nightmare.
Pull up our event page. I don't know if I can. Our events are pretty well listed through spring.
Well, on that note, do we want to do like once a month, or do we want to do more often until we get somewhere?
If you would do a digital meeting with a call-in number, we could do it more often. If we are required to be here in person, it'll be tough, especially for people on the other side of the state and north, to be here. Or we have to pick somewhere more central like Wausau. But this is a really great meeting.
Like
You did.
we have, we always have the access of the conference calls too,
Yeah.
which I know, we have, our association has a conference call number, it's free to be used, as far as that goes.
Yeah, those are good, and sometimes not so good.
Right, I understand. Or for those who cannot attend, could actually still
Call.
hook up, yeah. And I assume you have the equipment to handle it. I'm not talking about
I
even
was just
visual,
looking.
but,
Well, like we use that Zoom.us stuff, it's just like GoToMeeting. You have a call-in number, you can record it. People who have a little webcam, they'll show up if they want to. There's a chat thing. And it works on just about every device I've ever.
and it's something you have access to
Yeah, I got
without
a pro,
expense?
yeah, it's free to everybody. But it has a call-in number, so if you don't
Right.
have web or you don't have internet access, you can still just call in and still be
Right.
involved.
Yeah,
Like GoToMeeting.
Just my personal thought is the first couple of meetings, I think, should be more around the table. And as we get
As
more
much as
structured,
possible.
then the digital realm becomes more effective.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents.
It is good to shake hands and see eye to eye with people. I don't know a lot of you guys, so that is helpful for me. So pick a date.
Saturday or Sunday?
Let's grab one.
How about
Sunday's
Sunday the
better.
25th?
We
25th
have an
of
event.
Do you have an
February?
event
We have our winter trail ride.
on that Sunday?
24th is open, Saturday.
We have to
We
check.
won't be in much position
Yeah.
for the 24th.
You won't want to listen to anything we have to say then.
It's a polar plunge day.
We won't be doing.
Well, what about the weekend prior?
18th?
Sundays, in my opinion, might work better for people. You have family activities, you have things like that. Usually Sundays are quieter.
You've got your whole
18th.
camp set
Do you
up.
have to check the availability,
That's the
Joe?
whole weekend for Camp Center?
No, so our first problems.
We do.
See, here we go.
Yeah,
You said every other weekend.
yeah, we had one off here. Or I can just move, I can move my 25th. I can move that event. Go back, go back, 25th was good, we'll move our event.
24th or something?
I'll figure it out.
Joel, do you have to check out the availability if we're having it here?
If we're gonna have it here, I do, but I'm pretty sure I can get it. Sundays are easy. Right, I can always get this on
It's
Sunday.
pretty quiet downstairs.
At a park in the other lot, it's so busy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's somewhat central, I guess, right? I mean, obviously closer for that guy.
I mean, if most of us are here and if we did a Zoom thing on one of the computers to get the ones that aren't,
We
you
won't.
got Wi-Fi too, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't good.
Wonder how we
You're
can
going,
get patched
you're
in
going to be
here.
out of town, right?
Sure, we could patch
Yeah,
it.
you
Out west.
But we could.
That'd be pretty cool.
They got a set up here, we could probably.
What
So
date?
I was looking around to see if they already had a cam.
The 25th.
before I leave, I'll
It'll be
ask.
in
25th,
Vegas,
same
I
time?
Does that work okay?
Yeah. That'll be the worst day because we'll be all on the trails. But that's okay.
February 25th doesn't work?
They're out in
You're not gonna
Utah.
find us, never worry about
Oh,
They're gone for a month.
oh,
6 weeks, so
Oh,
at
okay.
least.
Yeah.
well, that's the beauty of recording these things, you can catch up after.
Yeah, either that or, like I said, a conference call, so I could just hear it
Sure.
more than anything. I know we'll be out on the trails on the 25th.
Kind of as a recap for tasks, I was gonna go back and get some thoughts on bylaws, right? Going back to the next meeting, and some thoughts on potential board structure and filing status. You know, create the agenda and work with a couple others on the press release.
I need somebody to get me hooked up with the private page.
Somebody will send you a link.
With the
to it.
private page,
I can.
because Joel did, Ryan did, but I couldn't get in on both of them where.
We're not friends, so I can't invite her.
I can
Right.
do it. Well, I think I can. Ellen, if I can't, Jan can, and we'll
Okay.
work it out.
Well, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll know for sure by
Yeah.
Saturday.
Someone's gonna have to. I'm
But-
still not winning on Facebook. My kids were trying to show me last night, I still was having trouble. They kicked me off one time, Facebook did, so
What did
You
you
gotta stop posting
do?
those
I
things.
didn't do
You're not
anything.
supposed to show those videos.
I think that's the problem, is I didn't do anything, and so it finally
Well,
kicked me off.
there's nothing in the Facebook group that also couldn't just be shared by email.
Yeah.
You're good at email,
Oh,
so
Yeah.
I could send you the link to the video on email, we could respond as a whole group to email.
Yeah.
I mean, just pick a format, I don't, as long as everybody can get to it, that's,
Most people are more alert to doing the Facebook, I think, is what the issue is, where,
Yeah, just get you hooked up with Facebook, because it really is easy.
I'm hooked up, I just can't get it to work.
I think we had some good discussion here, with the more user groups.
I don't know how a person gets kicked off, but
A couple of good points came
It's all that
across.
swearing and
Depends
stuff.
what you post.
I've been.
and if you're watching the video, post below if you have any questions or comments. We want to hear your something too. Thanks for watching.